Hi, hello, welcome, happy Monday, Doodle Crew friends. We're back! Yay! Very excited to be here. We are holding on to the last moments, last days of November, and we're bringing one more fun Hue-vember prompt. We weren't originally going to do this, but we were having so much fun playing with colors and figured that we would bring in not only special guests, but bring in some more colorful art for you here on Doodle Crew. So today we are playing with color and mood. So kind of up to the artist how they chose to interpret this, but playing with the effect that color has on a scene, on a character, all of that. And, you know, as always, you get to watch and see where we take this particular prompt. But yeah, go around, introduce, and if you want to talk about what you're going to do, you can. If not, it can be a surprise. I'm fine with either. Sarah, let's start with you.
Sure, I'm Sarah. I'm a multimedia designer for Duquesne, but I like to do comics and animations on the side. I'm doing a single scene in 3 different palettes, so I'll pull up my little scene.
You fancy.
Share.
Ooh.
So I'm just going to do this scene in 3 different palettes.
Oh, look at the baby.
And see how it feels.
That's cool. I like the colors. Ooh.
I spent a lot of time this weekend thinking about palettes and then changed them all up 5 minutes before hopping on.
Yeah, this sounds about right, and I like it, and I support you, and yeah, again, this is why we're art friends. Yep. So coming back, our wonderful color master, who is joining us again. Hi, Nicole.
Me? No.
You.
Hi, I'm Mayor Squish, pretty much everywhere on the internet. Sometimes Mayor Squish art. And I'm going to be playing with a dark orange / dark yellow color palette. Because like dark orange and dark yellow are more like cozy, comfy, nurturing colors. So I thought I would embrace the last little bits of autumn and do a scene inspired by that.
Yay. I'm excited. I'm excited to see you play with them. We had so much fun with the limited color palette, so I'm very curious to see this one. Also, as there is snow on the ground near where Paul and I are, autumn sounds really nice because it's not winter.
Though coincidentally, I heard that there was snow in Austria right now as well.
Oh.
Well, there was, and then it melted, so...
Aw, our stays. But hey, speaking of, what up, SoapboxKlotz? Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining us again.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm SoapboxKlotz. You can. I'm a retired streamer and a podcaster. That is still current. I can still make that claim. And of course, I co-host Crash Test Pilots with Nicole, and you can find me on Twitch and Twitter, though I rarely tweet and I almost never stream anymore. So yeah, hopefully in the new year we'll see. But yeah, I'm here to talk because that's what I like to do, and I guess arguably what I'm good at, though Nicole sometimes suggests otherwise, which is mean.
Yes, no, I brought you on because we always have, I love it because we have fun winding conversations whenever you're on, and I love that. Because it fits my brain style. But also, you stream with the Bromigos
once a month.
Yep.
So, like I said, I'm retired and I occasionally moonlight with 3 other dummies.
But they're our favorite dummies. So
yeah.
So you know me, you're on my channel, but as always, I'm a swan named Emily across the internet. Also, if you want to see more of Doodle Crew, you can follow us across the internet at Doodle Crew Draw. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can always suggest to us different prompts you'd like to see. Also, if you'd like to become a part of the Discord, you can do that. If you hit me up, I can get you into there. But yeah, so today I had an idea. I had a character because, of course, I'm doing a character because, as I said, I have one thing that I can do, and it's characters. But I really wanted to play with the idea of how the color of the scene affected the mood very specifically. So I'm going to try and draw the character relatively the same in each of them, but really play up how the colors and hopefully the limited color palette that I'm using kind of affects how the scene feels. We'll see how it goes. That's what I can promise. So yeah, get jumped into that. I have ideas. We'll see if they work. I feel like really should just be the theme of Doodle Crew. We have ideas. We'll see how they work.
It usually works pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. So I suppose this is a good time to bring up my one and only prepared topic, and we are going to be nebulous in where we meander. You had asked me to think of something, and as I recall, I said that color often conveys certain attributes to us. And so I was thinking about, like, in popular media, where color has been very prominent to, like, portray the mood, the actions, the personality of characters. And one of the first ones I thought of, which is kind of a bit of a meme, but we'll get there, is Power Rangers.
Ooh. Okay.
I was thinking the original Power Rangers. So if you think of the original five. You've got the leader, who is the Red Ranger, and red often being associated with, like, courage and bravery, and maybe even a little bit of, like, royalty. It's like, okay, yeah, that fits. That seems good. And then we have Billy, the Blue Ranger, and that's milk toast and lame and well, it's they always pick, like, a cooler color for, like, the nerdy ones, because also with Ninja Turtles, Donatello being purple, I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I got to Kimberly, and it was like, all right, pink because she's a girl.
Yep.
That's really that simple. And then it gets really awkward, because then I'm like, well, Trini is yellow. Oh no, because she's Asian. And then Zach is the Black Ranger because, oh no, what the, who approved this?
Oh, Power Rangers, no, what have you done?
Power Rangers, no. Yeah, a little bit awkward. But no, honestly, really though, with Power Rangers, I was thinking about it in regards to the journey we go through with Tommy, because he shows up as the Green Ranger and is initially a foe. Eventually he's rescued or converted, however you want to put it, and he joins the Rangers as a good guy, and it creates an interesting power dynamic, right? Because you have, like, the original leader, Jason, and now you have the new, like, kid on the block that's kind of taking his lunch in front of everyone and nobody's saying anything about it. But eventually he transforms into the White Ranger, which denotes, like, purity very often, right? Like, we think of white as being very clean and pure, and in, like, various religions it denotes holiness and all of that kind of stuff. I thought that was an interesting thing that aligns with his redemption arc. Yeah, Bean says saved, in parentheses, brainwashed. Yeah, so what teams or individuals in popular entertainment can you all think of where this kind of works out? And then can you think of any, like, catastrophic failures, like our friends, the Pink, Yellow, and Black Ranger?
Oh, yeah, Pink, Yellow, and Black. I was just like, oh, buddy. I don't want to say it's a failure. I want to say it is frustratingly consistent for a long time in a kind of flip-flopped backwards sense, because it used to be the opposite, and that's where boy characters are blue and girl characters are pink. And that and it's not always when they're human characters, it's often when they're, like, animal characters. And you're like, okay, well, you're going to have, the boy character, he's going to be blues or browns or something like that. And then the female character is going to be pinks or light beige or something, again, kind of more pure and All dogs are boys and all cats are girls. Yes, he who is Steve coming in with the straight up facts.
Mhm.
So like that's, I can appreciate that you can use color to kind of have a shorthand to get the audience to understand something without having to maybe necessarily name it or say it. But at this point, you can do better than just boys get blue and girls get pink.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't need it anymore. You can do something else with it. So I like, that's one where I'm just like, okay.
Powerpuff Girls were kind of flipped it a little bit. Like they were all cutesy colors, but they all stood for strength with them, and
Yes.
their enemies were purple and pink and green and like all different colors. And even like him, who was kind of androgynous, was his color palette was very intense, and it was more how vivid the colors were or how contrasted they were that was their dynamic. Like him, their whole color palette was just like uncomfortable because that was his character.
Yeah.
They played with color and like, here are these cute little girls that fight crime, but pink meant smart and the blue meant the cute one.
Yep.
And green was strength. So they like turned all of those color theory things on their head, and it worked.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I'm glad you mentioned that one because I like the way they play with color. Yeah, especially with the villains.
So I just thought of one that kind of doesn't fit the mold, but also does because it elaborates on a concept. That would be Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least in the modern context, black man. Batman is almost always entirely black. You know, the classic costume is gray with black trim, essentially. But it's interesting because we generally associate black with like darkness and evil, and not always, but like, you know,
often
it has a sinister connotation, and he assumes that in the, like, if you look at the Nolan trilogy, like he assumes that mantle because bats scare him and bats are intimidating, and so he assumes this intimidating dark visage to intimidate criminals and, you know, get the upper hand on them and everything. And he is, you know, depending on what you're looking at, whether you're reading a certain run or watching a certain show or seeing certain films, sometimes he's very heroic and other times he's more of an anti-hero. And he's definitely like one of the, probably the most dissected and deconstructed heroes in popular fiction because, you know, he has so many layers and he's been done so many different ways at this point with the same central like gist, but definitely gone down different paths. And so, yeah, he doesn't fit that traditional mold of like the hero is very obviously a hero. Whereas Superman, right down to the red and blue, which are, you know, here in America are America, you know, freedom and heroes. He doesn't have white in the mix like you would almost expect, but yeah. And then Steve said, except when he's blue. Yeah, I always forget about the blue.
Well, and to your point with that, I think it's interesting because when you're talking, when I go to it and I think of Batman cartoons, you've got something that's like the brave and the bold, which is meant to be more fun, more kid-like, more playing with the ridiculous nature of superheroes and supervillains. And so you play up, you know, gray and blue, and the colors are brighter and there's more vibrancy. Whereas, you know, like you mentioned with the Nolan trilogy, like everything is desaturated and everything is really dark. And, you know, his suit doesn't have any color to it. And when he's fighting at night, there's no color to that. So even just with the same character, you can kind of play with the tone of the show and what you're representing. Because of the, you know, the saturation and even the specific colors you use for that same character. But I was thinking that Spider-Man is one whenever they play with his colors, because in my brain, Spider-Man is always happy and jovial and silly and goofy and, you know, making fun and stuff like that. But you watch, you know, even when Spider-Man is in, we'll say, the MCU later on, like different times his suit will get a darker tone. Or I wasn't even going to bring that one up, Sarah. I was just going to glide right past that.
I missed it. What's she hinting at?
She held up 3 fingers.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
episode 3. Just...
No, I meant my computer made the noise. So
Oh, I was gonna say.
say.
So it's funny. It's not dinging to us, so we don't actually get to hear it this time. So I got nothing. I don't know.
She's
I
so
think I've heard
excited.
it a little bit. It was
Oh.
very, very, very quiet, so it's fine. But
Yeah, but she's got superhuman hearing, so
Oh, yeah,
that's
I'm
her
real deaf,
superpower.
so I don't hear it. Let's rephrase that. Emily doesn't hear it because Emily
Yeah.
doesn't
And
hear
Nicole's
much.
2 superpowers are super hearing and super annoying. So, you know, just she knows I'm playing. And I will pay for that later.
I thought it was new laptop for the win. No.
Yeah, Spider-Man is a good example. So when he donned the black suit originally, before we established the symbiote storyline and Venom and all that kind of stuff, before we really went down the road with it, he did kind of take a tonal turn in the writing when he took on the black suit. Things got a little darker and a little more serious at times, and kind of, I think, marked a major tonal shift in the book going forward.
Mhm.
And you know, of course, like then you take that and you've got the black suit that becomes Venom, and Venom becomes very exaggerated, and then you get Carnage that spins off of that, who's all red with a little bit of black highlights, and he is the, you know, the Venom is a bit of an anti-hero, not initially but eventually, and then nowadays, like with Agent Venom and everything, definitely an anti-hero. But Carnage was just pure evil,
Yeah,
and they showed it because they made him look that way.
I was
like
gonna say his red is very different than Spider-Man's red.
It's-
Spider-Man's red is happy and bright
Yeah.
and fun, and Carnage is like blood and pain.
Yeah, Carnage looks like a bloody mess essentially, which is the whole point, and it's executed very well. Now I'm really trying to grab some other. I kind of think a team sometimes, you know, like sometimes it gets kind of hokey, like Captain Planet. You got they get their elements, and that's kind of their color motif. Like,
Well, even to the fact of like which colors are which elements. Like you're always going to have red be fire. You're going to have
Yep.
green or brown be earth. You're going to have,
Mhm.
you know, white or light blue be air. Like you see it in a lot of shows that have elements as a main focus.
mm-hmm.
I was thinking even like I'm trying to think how I want to say it. Whereas like depending on the color of the power, so I'm thinking Dragon Ball Z specifically, like whenever you have like Goku doing his big thing, it's usually like blue and white, and that it feels like good guy colors for that. Whereas you'll see some of the like the lime green or purple or some of those, which again, I know we talked about it in one of the other color episodes. So often villains get black, purple, and dark and lime green to denote either, you know, poison or malice or stuff like that for their colors. So it's funny that, you know, even if I didn't know what was going on in Dragon Ball Z, I would see Goku firing off his power and be like, oh, he's a good guy because that's a good guy color for the power.
Yeah. Yeah, you think of like I'm just gonna hit on all the cartoons of my youth. G.I. Joe and like Cobra, they are all like black and dark blue with red emblems and iconography, all that kind of stuff. Where the Joes are all like, well, the Joes are often like just traditional like military costumes,
Mm-hmm.
presented as the good guys. Of course, this kind of brings up the other topic, though. Like, especially for children's media, am I the only one that ever thought that all the evil teams and people always had the more interesting costume designs?
Absolutely.
Happens a lot.
Like Star Wars, like the Empire looks awesome.
I mean, the rebels had no money, so
yeah, they're so poor.
they're so poor. I feel for that.
It's like, yeah, it's, the Empire looks awesome. The Cobra looks awesome. I will always, like, I don't watch Power Rangers anymore because I think it's kind of unwatchable drivel at this point, but I will always appreciate the character designs.
Yeah.
Every iteration of Super Sentai, just like the new costumes for the heroes, the way they build Zords for them, and then you look at the character creation on the enemy side, like they get really creative, they sometimes get thematic. I love all of that. I think it's amazing. And I'll always be blown away by that. It's cool how you can, like, expand a concept and just keep it going like that and still maintain a lot of those motifs.
Yeah. Well, and I think with Power Rangers specifically, because they keep playing with those same sets of colors, you can roll over into new seasons that have new actors playing them, new Zords, new elements to it, but you don't have to establish it from the very beginning because you kind of already have that language in the cultural zeitgeist that people know. Even if you don't know the show, you still kind of know. It's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know, now you know.
You just made Nicole's evening.
Well, I'm thinking, we talked about it a little bit when we did was it the last episode? I was on it, I should know, but I never remember. Where we did characters of a specific color, and I was thinking of like the Care Bears. And you had, specific characters who all worked in, I'll say, colors that denoted their emotions or their powers. Like, I just remember, and don't come for me, I was not a huge Care Bear person, but the Sad Bear was blue because they were sad.
Grumpy Bear.
I was all about the Care Bear cousins. I liked the Care Bear cousins.
That's all the other types of animals that are still, like, shaped like bears, right? Yeah. I like the cousins as well.
Braveheart forever. He was the raccoon.
Hello, Simkin. Also, I meant to say hi to Sonata Meg. I missed that earlier.
Yeah, Sonata was very excited about Gardic Phone and wanted to play Gardic Phone with the Doodle Crew.
So it's funny, and I'm a little bit spicy at the Bromigos, even though it ended up working out, because we've had originally this episode for, I don't know, a couple months was the placeholder was we were going to play Gardic Phone. And it was only recently that it changed. And so it's been funny to me that everybody's like, you got to do this. And I was like, oh, baby, it was already planned. It was already a thing. But we got to figure out a way to get Nicole able to play. That was one of my
they fixed the tablet stuff. So I can, I actually played around on my iPad last night. So it works.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed to work pretty well when we played last night. Now, to be fair, I don't want to be in spicy jail here. It was Steve. It was all Steve. So it's all his fault, but also he gets all the credit because we had a lot of fun. We definitely did not expect to have as much fun as we did. I know we didn't. Because, like, when we went on break in the middle of the show and then went at the end, everybody was like, wow, that was so much fun. That was way more fun than, and it's like, we could, I think Steve was like, this could be fun. And then it just ended up being way better than we anticipated. So, and I'm so glad we're not affiliated, so there's no proof of what happened.
Oh, that's right, because it disappears. Oh, that's funny.
I mean, there is proof, like everybody saved files and stuff, but that's not the point. Yeah, we had a blast, and it would be interesting to see people who can actually art, like Nicole, battle it out with each other, because those of us who cannot art, yeah. I though, okay, I will strongly recommend against doing the animation one with a lot of people, because we had a full lobby of 14 people, and it took like an hour and a half
Yeah.
to do the animation one.
Also, depending on which people we get for it, you literally have at least 6 Doodle Crew members who have degrees in animation. So I feel like that's going to be a very different vibe
Yep.
for.
The thing is, you only get however many members are playing. So, like, if we have 5 people, there's only 5 frames to the animation.
Tricky.
Which is like, yeah, that's kind of a bummer, because like when you have 14 people, that means you have to do 14 different pieces with 14 different frames. And it sucks.
Wait, Paul, are you saying that animation is a lot of work?
Yes.
And that crazy people do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could definitely see where the energy dropped off about midway, and people just started like being like, yeah, I'm not going to trace what you did last cell. I'm just going to do a whole new. Oh, there was an explosion. Oops. Everything disappeared. Oh no. Simkin's asking what was played last night. We played Gardic Phone, Simkin. We laughed so hard we got headaches.
It's always a win.
Steve, you got to you forget where you are, dude. You got to bring Doodle Crew energy, not Bromigos energy like you're bringing right now. I know the family-friendly ship sailed a long time ago, but
Yeah, that's the nice thing about when we do these through StreamYard is as long as I don't put those comments up, they don't end up in the final recording, so I can run a little bit of interference. But...
He's apologizing like a good Steve.
No, you're good, Steve. You're good. All right. I gotta pick up my pace a little bit is what I gotta do. Yeah, so we have decided that the auto mod has gone off the rails because Nicole and I have done a ton to allow it to just chill out, and it still gets real spicy with the chat sometimes. So my apologies.
I think it resets every week or something. It's really stupid.
Okay.
Interesting. All right, I think we've about exhausted that initial topic. The first thing I thought of was Power Rangers, and then I was like, yeah, Red Ranger, courage. Blue Ranger, nerdy, science. Pink, oh no.
And that's it. And we're just going to stop there and nothing else. Okay.
Oh no. It's so funny too, because like that, you know, we tend to talk about things that wouldn't fly anymore. That would not fly today. To be that like deliberate in these signed colors.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's good though. Jell had a villager to discard today.
Oh,
She got merengue on an island, or I'm sorry, campsite, not island.
Oh, nice. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was gonna try to bring up Animal Crossing and talk about like how the color palette is used in Animal Crossing, but it's very. Sometimes it aligns with like traditional norms, and then other times it's like let's just get weird with it.
Yes. But I also think it's interesting because while they use very, very bright colors, they are not full saturation colors. Like you're not going to see like real bright red except for on a couple of items, but not in the characters. Like there's still kind of a softness to a lot of it. So like the color palette all works really well together top to bottom. which is impressive in a game that has so many elements.
Simkin says, I think I saw something about Power Rangers entering the Marvel Universe in Japan. I have not heard of that.
Be interesting.
I'm ready for that crossover.
What was that?
Said I'm ready for that crossover.
Well, aren't they part of? I know a bunch. I know there are a bunch of franchises that have been kind of merged, and I think it was some of the property, at least the comic universes that IDW were doing, had a bunch of crossovers, and they were basically building to like a shared universe concept. Dell says, well, that's an East versus West thing, the palette. Yeah, it can be in some cases. And that, you know what? That's true as well, because, you know, we talk about how certain colors evoke certain emotions and certain ideals and such here in the West, but they can be starkly different in the East.
I always think of like celebration and like weddings, whereas for us, you know, so much of it, everybody usually thinks of, you know, white when it comes to weddings, but that's not a, you know, that's not a worldwide thing.
Right.
Whereas a lot of places, you know, red is a celebratory color, or there are other ways, you know, or like we've talked about on In Addition, like Indian weddings, where it's just the most amazing riot of color, and it's so bright and so colorful. Whereas, you know, I think you look at especially current weddings now in the US, where everything is much more toned down and very desaturated. This piece here.
Simkin says, let me do my best announcer voice here. The ever-growing storylines of Marvel Comics Avengers has grown even more as the team just made the Japanese Power Rangers canon within the Marvel Universe. The Avengers have found themselves facing a challenge they have never had before after the Red Skull takes away all of their powers using pieces of the Infinity Stones.
Interesting.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the Power Rangers are really jammed into that at all. I'm sure they are, but Red Skull is a good weird one, because it's like if I were to tell you, I have a character that is based out of one of the factions in World War II, and his name is Red Skull, which country would you attribute it to? I would have guessed the former Soviet Union, because, you know, Red Scare and all of that stuff. But no, it's not. I mean, then again, there is an association with Red and the other party involved. Yeah, but like, he's kind of a weird one. Definitely comes across as evil, though, for sure.
Yes.
I wonder if Red Skull has to be censored in China. Because there's a big thing about the depiction of skeletons in China. It's not allowed.
Interesting.
Because it's considered like sacrilegious, I believe. Which is funny because it's still technically sacrilegious in the West. We just...
We can't be stopped. All right. I'm sorry. I would love to pet you, but I need to draw.
That's true, Steve. I mean, I don't know that everybody knows that, but you're not wrong.
Go. There you go. Nope, not my headphones. There we go.
Jell says Red Skull's daughter is so cool. Yeah, maybe. Bean mentioned earlier Raven from Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because she has a palette that does denote evil, but that is because she's the daughter of one of the main villains in the setting, but she's trying not to be evil. And yet all of her powers are manifested in like traditionally evil looking ways. And
yeah, definitely. Okay, excuse me. Hi there. What are we doing?
Does somebody need attention?
Yes. Yes, she does. Steve, you are so spicy tonight. Hi. Are we going to eat my hair ties? Is that what we're going to do? Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's interesting that Marvel got the Power Rangers because DC got the Ninja Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
You think they were just like, well, we got to get the next most popular comic from IDW now.
Yeah.
And Netflix got Lock and Key. So
Yeah.
IDW does the Real Ghostbusters, I think, still too.
They might.
I think so.
They had kind of made it their mission to like revitalize a lot of those nostalgia brands, and
I think they're doing a good job of it, but I prefer IDW to the other major comic companies.
Yeah. I think they definitely get to play with a lot more fun stuff. And I see them hiring a lot more diverse talent a lot of the time, which is dope.
yeah, I was gonna say that IDW seems to look. It looks like they get to take more risks.
Yeah.
They get to really go for some oddballs. They also very frequently team up with Humble Bundle and do like very generous bundles. I can't always speak to the quality of what shows up in them, but I'm always blown away by like, because they sometimes they team up with Image, and Image is okay. They can be pretty comprehensive, but not always. But IDW, it's always like they throw the whole kitchen sink at you. They're like, yeah, like they'll do a Transformers bundle and they'll be like, here's this, all of these Transformers books. Also, here's this crossover with Transformers and something else. And yeah, this is basically everything we did over the last 10 years, except for like the last year's worth of books. Here, have it all.
Here you go. Enjoy.
And then people like, there'll be threads on like Reddit and places where they'll be like, is this comprehensive? Is everything here? And they'll be like, yeah, pretty much is everything here except for this like one episode that had a Doctor Who character in it and they don't have the rights to share it, so they can't throw that in. And it's like, oh, okay. So they literally gave you everything they possibly could. Guardian Randy says, hi all. Hi, hello.
Hi. Guardian Randy.
Welcome.
To catch up, you need to take 4 drinks.
Yep. Ding, ding,
with
ding.
the last couple days that Randy has had, I think he could definitely deserve a couple of drinks.
Speaking of like these smaller print houses, I wonder how they stay afloat. Because, you know, we look at like Marvel and DC and they've both been really struggling. So much so that like DC has basically gutted everything essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvel's not that far behind. Like they're doing better, but it's not like they're doing great.
Yeah.
Historically. And yet you've got these smaller houses like IDW that continue to pump out stuff. And it seems like at a pretty ready pace.
It has to be that they are smaller, and that's why they're actually surviving. Like the big guys are so part of
Monolithic.
everything.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's overhead. It's how many titles are you actually managing, which means how many artists do you have to pay? How many writers do you have to pay? Like we have stretched ourselves so thin because we're producing so many books, you know, whereas IDW, like they don't have as many properties. So you're not pumping out as many.
You do shorter runs of things.
Yeah. I was going to say, you don't have the massive ongoing.
Yep. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. 'Cause I have felt for a long time that, like, while I enjoy a lot of the more, I don't know how to put it, fringe, excuse me, some of the more fringe teams and characters and books in the big two, a lot of times I just look at the comic stand and I'm like, if I wanted to get back in, I wouldn't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many books on this shelf. Like, and it's not like I'm looking at the totality of everything comics and saying there's too much to choose from. I'm looking at just the big two, and it's like, I'm feeling Marvel today, and there's 50 monthly books on the shelf, and I'm like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how far along they are in this run, and of course, we never know how long a writer's going to get, and we all know that like a run can plummet in quality precipitously, depending on who's writing.
Yep.
I think maybe there's less pressure too for like IDW. Like, yeah, I want to see Transformers beating the crap out of each other. Did I get that? Yes. Win.
Yeah.
I don't need tragic backstories for every person from Cybertron.
But if I don't know what happened to Starscream, how can I read this book, Paul? How can I read it?
Didn't you know that in 1987, Starscream was brutally beaten by his older brother? And that informs his costume change in 1993. And then later on in 2005, when he told this character to suck it, it was because that's actually his big brother in a new costume. And yeah, if you want to learn more about that, turn to the Fantastic Adventures of Starscream, Volume 73.
Yep. No, and I think as a person who's been collecting comics and who's read a number of characters from the big two, like I used to get real frustrated when they would do the crazy like X-Men crossover books, because all of a sudden this one series that I've been collecting, now I have to pick up like 2 or 3 other ones, and in order to really understand and like catch up with what that series has been doing, you have to go back a couple of episodes. So I understand it and I can appreciate it, and you need to keep reinventing yourself and giving people reasons to keep buying your comics, and I get it, but it definitely was not the most accessible way as a small collector for me to keep reading stories that I really enjoyed. And I know like Dell in chat says you pick a character, and that was kind of what I did. Obviously for some of mine, I follow artists. So I'll follow artists to different books that I like their art. So I'm going to pick up the book that you're working on because I like your art. I might end up liking the story a lot too, but that's kind of my initial getting into it. But I am much more choosy about the big characters that I read now. Like if there's a really good, the Court of Owls was a neat story for Batman. Batman White Knight had an artist on it that I loved, but it was a neat story. So those I'll pick up. But I'm not actively collecting the ongoing detective series. I'm not collecting, New 52 Batman, like, because I just don't care. Doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean they're good. I just don't care. It's not what excites me. But, something like Giant Days, which was a totally random, independent, brand new series, brand new story. I was like, oh, this is cool. And it's something different. And it's just this one, like, storyline in single issue form that I can then easily pick up and follow. I mean, not me, because I can't keep up on anything. So some people can, but not me. But those draw my attention a lot more than the ongoing nature of a lot of the big characters. But
so that kind of reminds me what you were saying about needing to like do something new and compelling, but also like sometimes I feel like they throw the baby with the bathwater. In particular, for me as a child, teenager, junior high age, I had started to read Spider-Man monthly. So I was getting the Amazing Spider-Man every month. And then the Clone Saga hit. And I was like, what the F is this?
Yo, who the F is this?
Because they basically character assassinated my favorite comic character at the time. When they, and sorry, spoilers for a run from 25 years ago.
No.
The gist of it was that the Jackal had cloned Peter, and that our Peter Parker was not the original Peter Parker. It was a clone. And I was like, what? No. And then they did some other stuff, and I can't remember if it ultimately ended up being him or not, but there was this like debate between him and Ben, who was Scarlet Spider, being who's the real one. And so it became such a storyline quagmire that I was like, I literally dropped it right then and there, like 13, 12, 13, 14-year-old me was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I love this character. I love this book. I loved everything about it. And then I hated it because it was just, you ruined it. You ruined it all for me. Simkin says the mega arcs be like, here's a cool story. Now get 12 trades of stuff to understand the full story.
Which, this is such a weird thing. There's a fine line between having compendium material, which is cool, but I want the compendium material to not dictate elements of the story. So you can read, we'll say, Marvel's Civil War, with the first Civil War comic that came out, which the movie is somewhat based on. It has similar elements, but you can read just the baseline Civil War and understand it and enjoy it. And then they have all of these spin-offs where you get to follow Wolverine through how Civil War goes for him. You get to follow Spider-Man, and they're interesting and they're fun, and I think some of them are done really well and some of them are kind of meh, but I don't have to read them in order to feel fulfilled in the full story. And that's the big thing to me. Like, no, it's cool that you're now giving me, like, hey, when Spider-Man wasn't in this issue of Civil War, the main story, here's what he was doing. And now it's a fun, personal, you got to spend more time with Spider-Man and watch him grapple with what he was struggling with and this, that, and the other thing, which is cool and adds to the whole overall story. But you didn't need it in the main ongoings. It would have slowed down the pace and it wouldn't have fit there. So, it's kind of it's the bonus content. It's the deleted scenes. And if you handle them like that, then that can be really nice, but you don't need it to understand.
And some of that side content that you're talking about in Civil War in particular was really good. Like,
yeah,
really exceptional stuff. I mean, the one I always bring up in context is there's a couple of things. One of them was I'm going to forget some character names, I think, because there's so many now.
It's also been years since I read it.
So if I recall correctly, like, one of the issues was Daredevil, because, there's the Mutant Registration Act, and they're registering everybody who has powers. Daredevil, Matt Murdock, was in danger of getting outed, and he's, an active practicing lawyer as well as Daredevil. Mm-hmm. So he had to, he got the help, and I believe it was Danny, the Iron Fist, who filled in for him in the costume for a little while, mm-hmm. and gets arrested. I think it's him, if I recall correctly, that gets arrested in Civil War as Daredevil. And it's largely to take the heat off of Matt. But he makes a whole, I think it's Tony was there. He makes a whole, 2 pieces of silver jab at Tony, implying that Tony's Judas. And it's some of the best writing to come out of the big 2 in forever. It's because it's perfectly in flavor for Daredevil being really closely tied with his Catholic upbringing and everything, to make a biblical reference like that. Mm-hmm. And then it was topical to what was going on, and it was a great side story within this larger unfolding narrative. There's also another one with the Punisher and Cap. I believe it was during Civil War as well, where the Punisher got the up on Cap, but then just couldn't finish the fight because he respects him too much.
Yeah, which again, talk about a difficult character to navigate. I mm-hmm. thought Punisher was done really well in Civil War.
Yeah.
So I don't always think he's done really well.
No, yeah. Yeah. People like to say he's an anti-hero, but he's not even supposed to be that. He's supposed to be in a league of his own. Not aspirational, folks. Yeah. Simkin says, you want to know what is the what the worst is when a book you enjoyed is been over with loose story threads, and then you find out that they eventually did cover what happened in some random book down the line that you can't find.
Mm.
Yep. And he says they did that with Next Wave.
Oh, Next Wave was good.
And then sometimes you get the situation going on with, we have the MCU, which is doing very well overall. and people are, especially now that we're in phase 69, we're starting to see more contemporary storylines being adapted. Pretty notably here with the new Hawkeye series, we're getting Kate Bishop stuff, which is cool. I haven't checked it out yet. I'm just talking about it in general terms, which is relatively recent in comic history compared to Civil War, which feels like it was recent, but Civil War was almost 20 years ago now.
I know. I knew you were going to say it. I was bracing myself for it because I'm like, oh, something's going to hurt.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Guardian Randy had brought up, oh God, it's the Arrowverse crossovers every year.
Yep.
Yeah, that was, they were doing the same thing in comics. Nope. Refresh. They were doing the same thing for the television series that they would always do in the comics. And I was like, yeah, this wasn't the thing that you should have tried to emulate. That wasn't nothing I can't watch 6 DC shows that all tie in together. I can't keep up. But I know, and Randall and I had talked about it. He said that the Supergirl actually had a really great finale where they did a good job of wrapping things up and making it feel paid off, which I think is very difficult to do when you have so much universe going on.
Yes, well, character assassination, they did my boy Ollie dirty.
Oh.
I really enjoyed what Arrow had become. It was a little rocky at first because they were finding their feet. They were really doing a brand new thing that nobody had done yet.
Yeah.
Because, I'll always say this, what Kevin Feige accomplished with the MCU will probably never be topped. There may be future franchises that have just as many movies with just as many moving parts, but it will have become something that has been done before.
Mm-hmm.
They forged a new path. Nobody had done anything on that scale yet. I mean, and honestly, the other biggest franchise in the world couldn't even get a new trilogy out without stepping all over itself. Not every film was great, but the overall narrative and what it concluded into with Infinity War was incredible. It was an incredible achievement. And the DC animated stuff has always been really great, but it's also focused on being largely episodic rather than a shared universe with continuing storylines. So what the Berlantiverse accomplished, once it found its legs with Arrow and then eventually adding Flash and so on to the mix, it was very promising at first, but then they got caught in the CW vortex, I feel like.
which is hard. It's a very strong pull to that vortex.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because when you put a show like that on a channel like the CW, it's so what's your primary audience? It's teenagers and young people, college age people. How do we keep them enticed? Well, we got to give them the immature drama because that's where they're at in their life. That's what's compelling. That doesn't build for a great narrative for adults after a while. It's fine in the early stages because you expect it, but you kind of want to see these characters grow into capable adults eventually and not be, Peter Parker couldn't be a teenager forever. You can reboot and go back and start telling stories about him as a teenager again if you want. That's been done, but you can't. And the same thing happens with Barry and Ollie. So it's unfortunate what happened with the end of Arrow though, because it was definitely that center mast, the tent pole, if you will. And it just narratively it crumbled for me.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Well, the Felicity, they character assassinated Felicity, and then just went all downhill from there. And I was like, ugh, bleh. Simkin says, question: do you think 616 Marvel needs a reboot a la DC Crisis?
Excuse me. Thank you. As far as comics or as far as cinematic?
I think he means comics. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Cat, why? So I struggle because I go to New 52 because it's the thing that has happened more recently, where I didn't love what New 52 did and the reboot and all of that. I didn't enjoy it. And then a lot of it then ended up having them just work their way back to like, not necessarily how can we undo all of this, but how can we put some of it back and bring back things that we did and change them. And so I'm skeptical of it because I think it's really hard to pull off. And I think it's not, you'll get a win out of one or two characters, but if you're doing it as a whole, like universe wide thing, I think a lot of characters are going to suffer for it. So
somebody is saying, "Mommy, less talking, more snugglies."
oh my goodness, yes. Someone has needs right now. I can't hold you. There you go. Yeah, now we're done.
I would say that my opinion is Marvel doesn't need to do what DC did because it has the universe labeling system.
Yes.
So they've essentially already opened themselves up to that with their multiverse. And so, they don't. I think what Marvel should probably do is maybe stop telling as many stories in 616 and let something like Ultimates, like they did before, flourish.
Yeah.
And they've kind of done that. Like with Spider-Man, they did the Spider-Verse, like we got the huge, very wide-reaching storyline and factions that are involved with that, which is cool. And it doesn't have to completely warp everything that's happening in the main narrative in 616. They can, into the Spider-Verse, lapse into a different version of the universe, and then all of that stuff can play out there, and then they can come back. Like the Victors can come back. And they don't have to either. They can just be gone for a while.
Right.
And I think you can definitely do that with a lot of the cosmic level stuff in Marvel as well. DC's just not as primed for that for whatever reason.
Yeah. And I know you had like Darkest Night. Was that the big Green Lantern thing? That their cosmic stuff is a little bit more, but even with that, it doesn't. I don't know. I feel like my I like Marvel more than DC is showing right now.
Yeah.
I guess it's just the stories that Marvel tells and the way that they handle their universe. And like you said, if I want to read Ultimate Spider-Man, I can read the Ultimate storyline. And then, I want to read also in the Ultimate Universe, so I'll read Ultimate X-Men or Ultimate Avengers, and I can do that. Like, that just fits better for me and how I read.
Yeah.
And it just tells stories that are more what I'm looking for.
Guardian Randy put a pin in that. I'm going to swing back to that. We'll make that a whole topic. Simkin says, what I don't like is that 616 is pulling in everything from other universes. I could see that being the issue. You don't want to sully 616 with all of the other stuff. You want to take what is good about 616 and push it out into new vectors and tell interesting new stories in other slices of your multiverse, in my opinion. Because that's what it's... I hate to say it, because I always gripe about timey-wimey nonsense, but it's essentially like that. Like, you can take a character, remove them from 616, go do stuff that has consequences for that character, but doesn't have earth-shattering storyline-changing consequences for 616.
Yeah.
Except that character is currently omitted from the events of what's going on. All right, circling back to Guardian Randy, he said, okay, but that announcement about the continuation of the X-Men 90s animated series, hype. Yeah. So from what I've heard so far, now I haven't looked into this extensively, but from what I understand is they're bringing back almost everybody that they can, cast-wise, with a notable exception of the voice actress for Jubilee turned it down, and she said she would like an Asian voice actor to play Jubilee instead.
Aww.
She doesn't think it's appropriate for her to play the character, which I respect.
Absolutely.
And that's how you lean into, our new perspective and the woke age. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying, that's the shorthand for where we're at.
Well, it's also how you actually push for a change. Because again, it's got to be, as a creator, it's got to be difficult to not take a paying gig, especially for something that I'm assuming she liked. But if that representation is important to her, that's how you hopefully do it. You hope that by saying that, no, I'm telling you no for this specific reason, you hope that then, the production company says, oh, we should do this thing. Even if it's just because it'll be good PR, like, you should still do the thing. And because it's the right thing to do. But
And if people involved have their heads screwed on straight, when somebody does something like that, that gives you the opportunity to now look at that person and say, we could employ you for other roles.
Where can we put you? And
Where
still
can we
utilize
put
you?
you and have it be appropriate, which will get applauded as well, because now we'll get the positive PR of, one, casting somebody who's ethnically appropriate for this role, and two, we will also find someplace else for this person who turned it down to be, utilized as well, and we get to win. We get to check all the boxes.
All I do is win.
Simpkins says it would be hilarious if they go down the Vampire Jubilee story in the 90s style.
Yeah, that's a weird storyline.
I am excited about the continuation because from what I understand, they really are going to try to pick up where they left off and be reverential to the original material, but start telling new stories, which is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And they're going to utilize a similar, if not, I don't think it'll be the exact same animation style because things have just changed so much. And
I hope not, because I hated it. I didn't hate it. That's not true. It just wasn't my favorite. I feel like you could do something that is similar, but we can do better.
You can streamline the process and make it look better without changing the overall aesthetic, I think is what the goal would be.
Yeah.
I don't have to know much about animation to know that how we did it 30 years ago can be improved upon. Like anybody with a brain can figure that out. Randy says the world will collectively scream for joy when we hear Rogue say sugar.
Yes. Much excitement.
I think it's a great time for the X-Men to rise to prominence again, in my opinion. What a lot of people don't necessarily notice on face value is that the X-Men has always been about the downtrodden, the disadvantaged groups and how they've been treated by society. And because this is such a issue at the forefront of our cultural discourse at the moment, having the X-Men come back into the narrative and, represent groups again could be fantastic.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot of compelling stories, and you can do some carefully crafted allegory and, provide another generation of fables for young people, which, of course, less nostalgia-driven 30-somethings are going to gobble it up as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think just bringing it around to talking about color, whereas I don't think any, let me rephrase. I don't think the majority of the X-Men have specific color palettes that say, this character is a boy and he's bad, or this character is a girl and she's good. But you do have, because of their time spent in the costumes, you do have characters that are very recognizable by only a couple of colors. Like we're talking about Rogue, and I think of that like emerald green and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And like that makes me think of Rogue, or as you've got like the magenta and purple makes me think of Magneto. Like,
yep.
It is cool that, and I'm always impressed when it is very few colors, because as we've talked about, that's hard to do. It's hard to make a character so instantly recognizable using such a limited color palette. Now, obviously some of that came from comics and publishing only having access to limited colors, but I think it speaks to the quality of the designers that they were able to make, especially X-Men, because it's so many people, it's so many characters, and yet until you get into the really, really extended, the hundreds of thousands of X-Men that there are, like, you're not going to get a ton of overlap in colors, except for when you unify them as a team. And I think of, like the original comics where they're all wearing blue and yellow because they're all meant to match.
And then we got our Nightcrawler and Beast Blue, our original sad boys.
Yeah, and Jubilee yellow and pink. Yep. So I think that's really interesting.
Yep. Dell says, Nightcrawler Blue, which is not Mystique Blue or Beast Blue. I do think Nightcrawler and Beast brush up against each other in their hues. occasionally, but I also think that's why they're often put on different teams.
Mm.
You know, if I recall correctly, in the 90s, Nightcrawler was on gold and Beast was on blue for a while. Yes, I knew that there were different teams. I had a preference for gold, but I think a lot of people did. Well, that's an interesting thing as well, too. Like they really took a massive like clump of characters and they split them up into teams and they gave those teams identities, but they're still all X-Men. They're still all like in this collective together. They would show up and help each other still, despite being on separate teams. It was a cool thing that they did.
We're all in this together.
X-Men will always be my favorite comic team.
I'm sorry. I did that just to make Nicole smile.
Oh boy, my childhood. I remember going to see that in the cinema. It was weird.
It's very strange to only ever watch it as an adult. That was a strange experience.
What
for
are you
me.
referencing? Because I didn't catch it.
High School Musical.
High School Musical.
Oh.
Yeah,
Gross stuff.
I think I made Paul watch it because he hadn't seen it or something.
Yeah, I think we watched the first one.
Yeah. Didn't we watch all of them?
Maybe.
No, we definitely only watched the... No, wait, we did, because you got freaked out by the fish dance in the second one. Which is a valid thing to get freaked out by, because it was weird.
Apparently, I've blocked that out.
It's not a bad idea. No, I remember, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Simkin had said a little while ago, Legion was a fun ride, but it was easy to forget it was X-Men / Marvel.
Which, honestly, I'm going to say something. I don't think that's a bad thing.
I don't think it hurt it.
Because I almost feel like because you forgot it was X-Men, anybody who was worried about not understanding X-Men was still tuning in for it because they didn't necessarily be like, oh, well, this is X-Men, so I don't want to watch. Like, it was just like, oh, it's a really weird show. And if you did know, then, you know, you get to get all the subtle nods that they put in.
Well, you know, I think that was something that the Netflix Marvel shows did a really good job with. They became their own little slice of the MCU because originally they were supposed to be part of the MCU, but they really weren't. But nobody was supposed to know that. You know, so we started with Daredevil, and you didn't really feel like you had to know any of the like Avengers stuff or anything else to know what was going on. And as they added more and more to it, you felt like these characters existed in the same world, but until they were brought together to interact with each other, you didn't feel like it was forced. And you didn't feel like you were missing that much either. Yes. So, yeah. That's another thing that's a shame how it all shook out because it had a lot of promise and then it just fell off a cliff.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a Marvel fangirl all over the place here, apparently. It was not my original plan, but I love the idea that you've got, we'll say just the Defenders, because that covers, you know, Iron Fist, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage. That they're not the A-list heroes, and so you get to tell these really great, like, street-level stories with them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you can still have elements of the major Marvel events happening and affecting them. And it just, like, I think that's why it's so good that those stories can be told separately. And while there is that little bit of overlap, it doesn't necessarily directly influence how their stories go. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it that much more because that, like, the Jessica Jones comic, Alias, was so cool because it was just about her story. And you had these other bigger characters who got introduced and pulled into it, but it was just her story and what was going on with her. And I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Tell says they gave you the bits you needed, like getting an office cheap because of Chitauri damage.
Yep.
Still so sad we'll never see that particular iteration of the Daughters of the Dragon again. I agree with that. It looked like they were building up to Misty and why am I blanking on? Oh, Colleen. Misty and Colleen. Like, we were so close to that, and it would have been such a cool show, and then everything fell apart.
Yeah.
Simpkins says, I hope She-Hulk brings back some of that street-level stuff. I agree with that. It'd be nice to get... Because, all right, here's the thing. One of the big criticisms that gets lobbed at the MCU is that, like, at this point, we've seen so much high-level, literally existential threat. Like, oh, all of life might cease to exist type stuff.
Mhm.
After a while, it loses its punch. You can't keep one-upping yourself in that way. But street level stuff always, like, there's always another gang that's going to come in and try to, do bad stuff and take over a territory. There's always another group of people being treated poorly by a corporation or, a gang or something like that you can tell their story and highlight. You can take, from the pages of real life and put them onto your comic page and tell compelling stories.
Yeah.
And Simpkins says Hawkeye is doing a bit of that. So, yeah, I haven't checked that out yet, but...
Yeah, I'm woefully behind on this chunk, not because of disinterest, just because of time and brain space. But,
well, I mean...
You take in so much media at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. And this, right now, it's a glut. It's a major glut. For me, it's like I want to watch all of Wheel of Time, which luckily is coming out weekly. I want to watch Cowboy Bebop. I want to watch Arcane. Now I want to check out Hawkeye. I still haven't finished Loki. I didn't finish What If.
Yeah, I still haven't done MODOK. Like, I want to, for better or for worse for it. I still want to watch it. Yeah, I haven't checked out Black Widow yet. I haven't checked out Shang-Chi yet. I just... Oh, also, I'm sorry. This is the one I'll stop simping for only Marvel. Young Justice, DC animation. Just, oh, my heart. Talk about absolutely gorgeous storytelling and animation. Hey, I heard that one.
5 or 6. 6, I think. 5.
Yeah, we are certainly at a point where there's a lot to watch, which is good, but this is where things fall through the cracks, though. Like, I've definitely had, like, friends of mine be like, how come you haven't seen this thing yet? And I'll be like, what else came out around it?
Yeah.
I don't inhale television like I once did, where I would finish a new series in the day it came out. Sometimes. That has still happened this past year, but it's not as prevalent.
Well, and I know, and I remember a lot of comic creators that I was following and and reading interviews with and everything, and their big statement was always, we love this medium, we love creating in it, but unfortunately it means that we don't always get to consume it as much. And I've definitely found that to be true, especially when I'm busy with work and art. But there is a part of it too where, for me, the specific media that I am consuming will influence the art that I'm creating. And once in a while, I need that to not happen. I either need to be very immersed in my own style or my own storytelling so that I'm not just regurgitating somebody else, or I need to be getting a lot of different things being told to me or shown to me so that I keep having a lot of variety to pull from to tell captivating stories or illustrate captivating things. So there are times where I will shy away from consuming media because I want to create my own original things and not be influenced by that. So I don't know. Sarah and Nicole, do you find that as well?
I bounce around. I'm working on zombie stuff. I better be watching horror movies. Working on the werewolf teenage stuff. I need teen drama and werewolves. So it's working on fantasy stuff. I'm going to put some Willow on.
I find that not really with like television shows or movies, but I find it when I'm watching other people do art that a lot of times I'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll put a pin in that. Maybe I can do something with it. And then at some point I'll do essentially the exact same thing, but I won't notice it until it's done. And I'm like, oh, I did this. I copied this. That's not good. So yeah, I kind of feel that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to go a little far afield with this, but similar to this pops up in comedy a lot, right? There's been a lot of accusations of people stealing bits. Now, I will say, there are examples where people have like taken somebody's bit and then like they show whoever's been accused of taking that bit, and it's literally word for word verbatim.
Yeah.
It's not inspired by, it's not similar to, it's not something that got lodged as a kernel in their subconscious and then came out as their own work later on down the road. It literally was just, we stole it. Or your writer did, and, you know, it's Amy Schumer. Sorry. Which I don't necessarily, okay, I threw shade, but I don't necessarily know that Amy made the decision to steal other people's work, but somebody on her writing staff did, because they had lifted bits directly from other places.
Which, again, is when you are the figurehead and when you're the face of the company, you're going to catch flack for it, even if you weren't directly responsible for it. And that's the price you pay for that aspect of it. And I would say I don't want to say not vetting your people, but just, not making it a company policy, be like, hey, we don't steal stuff because that's bad.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
But yeah, it happens in comedy. Like, people will come up with similar bits. They'll hear somebody, and then 10 years, 15 years down the road, they'll be crafting a new set, and it'll just, oh, this is a funny idea. And it's not always willful.
Yeah.
I see it a lot in fantasy, like one of my favorite or sci-fi franchises, Warhammer 40K, like, there's been a big hubbub with them this year about protecting their IP because they banned fan animations, on YouTube and other places, and people are like, well, that's pretty rich because your entire intellectual property is based on like popular 70s, 80s, and 90s science fiction that you stole. Like you stole the concept, like for example, the way space travel is done is ripped from Dune, and the way this organization is structured is ripped from this other piece of fiction. And like, basically they just took like all this stuff and they made their goulash, if you will, out of a bunch of other people's ideas. And yeah, it's their own original thing because they scraped the serial numbers off, but anybody with any understanding of like the wider scope of the the genre sees the Frankenstein monster for what it is. You can see all the seams basically. But yeah, sometimes it's unintentional, like you.
Well, and I think it is difficult as an artist to not pick up things and have it inspire you. And there are definitely times where you will, you'll create something that, like you said, you might have seen it years and years and years ago, and it's just been living around in there. But because you saw it, it's in your brain, and you end up putting it out there, and it can be a little concerning, especially in this digital age where we're able to share so much more information so globally. So something that I might have come across on a GeoCities site back in the day from an anime, now there's a whole group of people who all know about this anime. So when you do a character design,
maybe
8, yeah, I think 8. It could be formulated from this thing that I saw so many years ago. But I think then it's an accountability. It's ownership of, was I inspired by this? Did I just rip this off? Do I need to go back and rework this thing that I did because it's no longer original? Or are we taking it in a different enough direction that it isn't just ripping off the original and it is making new content from it? And, it can unfortunately be very subjective. Like it's not a black and white thing because I don't think it's not.
To trigger you, did you trace or did you ink?
Freaking tracers.
Trigger many of the Doodle Crew.
It happens. It happens in pretty much any creative field. It happens in music.
Yep.
It's. I said there was a whole conversation I saw recently about Led Zeppelin. It's no secret now. We now know many decades later that a lot of Led Zeppelin's most famous songs are old blues songs that they effectively covered, or they took the licks and put new lyrics to it or whatever. Their career is basically built on the backs of like American black artists that didn't ever get the credit they deserved at the time when it was happening until many years later. Does it mean that the group is without creative merit? No, of course not. They still had many original songs. They had incredible creative works, but a lot of their most famous stuff was stuff that was either straight up lifted and covered without proper annotation, or mildly adapted as to appear original. Or what's the term used for like YouTube and stuff now? Nicole would know.
Fair use.
But like, what's the term where you transformative?
Transformative, yeah.
Sufficiently transformative. Dell says some rocker was sued for plagiarizing himself. I could see you doing that if like you have like an album or two under one label, and then you go to another label and you like reuse one of your licks or something, and like, oh
gosh. Oh.
I have heard of like artists, because during lockdown a lot of musicians turned to Twitch and YouTube. They started doing live streams and stuff to stay in touch with their audience and like not go insane, and also quite frankly to make some money.
Yep.
And I've heard of like a couple of the channels getting copy struck when they're playing covers of their own music. I mean, I say cover, but like I only mean that in the sense that it's not the actual original recording. They're playing it live.
Yeah.
Save everyone.
Oh, thank you.
It's only been an hour and a half.
Hey, you know what though? I did actually name it this time. I didn't go that full hour and a half working on a completely blank, unsaved canvas. So, baby steps.
Guardian Randy asks, "What is Sarah working on? What secrets does she hold?"
I guess I could share. I'm doing the same picture, but in a bunch of different color palettes. Let me do the share thing.
Simkin has redeemed Stretch.
Oh, I just did that and my back crunched. So, oh, look at the baby.
That's super cute.
It's so cozy.
It looked so weird without shadows, and I'm like, why does it look so blah? And as soon as I laid in some shadows, I'm like, oh, that's why. Because it's like geometric, but everything's looks flat. I almost did it wrong. I almost stopped. I almost like closed Photoshop instead of stop sharing. Which luckily I did save recently, but that could have been rough.
I do that when I play Hunt with my roommate, because occasionally we share our screens with each other to show replays through NVIDIA's game capture function. And I will click out of the call to close the stream.
Oops.
So somebody will just be talking and it'll go quiet, and then we'll be like, oh, wrong button. Wrong button. Guardian Randy says, that's so fun. I like the diorama setup.
Well, I wanted to do something different because I never do environments in like isometric little boxes.
Little boxes.
So I to draw it yesterday though.
I'm sorry. I just enjoyed the Paul and I started singing Little Bucks.
You're going to run out of fingers soon, Sarah.
I have some toes. It'll be fine.
Oh, I'm drawing on the wrong thing. What am I doing? Just add. Stop it.
Dell says it was John Fogerty of CCR. Yeah, that's because he doesn't have the rights to the CCR music, is my understanding. Yeah, He comes from that era when the labels owned everything and the artist didn't always get credit.
Well, it's also like I mean, I remember going to see Styx play in concert, but it was when they were on to their second vocalist, and they could only play Mr. Roboto in a medley because they can't play that full song because he owns that song. So interesting. Also, going way back, I just wanted to say how cozy Nicole's piece also looks. Like, I love that we've got two super cozy pieces.
Yeah.
happening.
I want to curl up in front of Nicole's piece.
And eat soup. Like,
Phrasing?
real bad.
Hot chocolate.
And hot
Big
chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
Give me some hot chocolate. Give me some hot tea.
I have some really
Nicole
cold
usually
tea.
has the good tea.
Oh, no. What are you doing? Stop. Stop. Mm-mm. So, I don't. You always claim this as yourself, Paul, and I don't think it's fair. But when you talk about, you are not the same type of artist as we are, but you are still, I count you as an artist because you make things and you paint. How much does color palette and mood lighting and all of that, like, how much does that help with your immersion in a show or a movie? Or how much of it just you're focused on other elements of it?
I think it very much depends on what the content is. So, for example, Simkin and I watch The Expanse together.
Okay.
And so that's science fiction. But it is science fiction that is rooted very much in real world, like practical. It's a practical look at the future of humanity. At the beginning of the series, there is travel all around our solar system, but that's it. Like, we're not going interstellar. There's no faster than light travel. So everything is very rooted in real. It just is logically jumped forward a few hundred years. And so because of that, the color palette and how things are presented is somewhat muted in a lot of cases. There's not a ton of like really vibrant colors until the story involves, I mean, this is the very beginning of the show, so if anybody cared, they'd probably check it out already. But there's a particle that they encounter that kind of, it's weird because it like mutates stuff. It's hard to explain, but it has a kind of distinctive color palette. It's a more like a neon palette type thing going on because it's meant to like be very stark. It's like when it's infected something, it is suddenly very different, you know, than everything else, and it stands out. So until that really gets involved, I mean, when they're in like towns and stuff, there's a bit of a, you know, you expect that kind of dystopian future. Think like Blade Runner, you know, there's bright neon signs and stuff, but everybody's dressed kind of drably. So it's practical is the way I would describe it. So there it's like the aesthetics aren't quite like, at least as far as hue is concerned, it's not quite as prevalent. But then I look at something like, I just watched the first episode of Arcane, which is the new League of Legends program on Netflix. And they're, oh man, they are just like, it is gorgeous. The animation and art style is just gorgeous, and everything looks like a painting. You know, they're not going for hyper realistic, they're going for very stylized, and it is vibrant, to say the least. Like, there's dreariness at parts, but you know, the two main characters, Vi and who eventually becomes Jinx, she's not called that initially, who anybody who's played League of Legends might recognize those characters. Vi has bright pink hair leaning towards purple, and Jinx has kind of bright blue hair. So like the two main characters are children, and they have this bright color palette for their hair, and it stands out when they're living in the slums. So like it's a kind of a dreary, toned down, desaturated environment, but they stand out. But then they go up to the shiny, happy part of the city, and everything is very bright. Everything's well lit. There's shiny brass and such everywhere. It's very stark, and it's meant to convey like the shiny, happy people who are living in opulence compared to the poor people who are scraping by and the dregs of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's remarkable. You have to check it out. At least watch the first episode to see the art style, because it's gorgeous. And a lot of people are praising it. A lot of folks who didn't play League of Legends are saying this is great. Like, this is a really good show. So
Awesome.
people are enjoying the art. People are enjoying the narrative. Similarly, I watched the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, the live action, and being based on an anime, they have to use palette. Like, they have to use hue. There are Spike, arguably the protagonist. He wears a kind of weird, like, I wouldn't call it navy blue, but a blue suit that fits him kind of like loosely. And it's like, it's so stark because nobody else quite dresses like he does.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of stands out amongst everybody else. A lot of the other characters dress more either utilitarian, or they go the opposite direction. They're like all dolled up because they're wealthy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looks like kind of like somebody who worked in an office who just got off their shift, had a couple beers at the local noodle bar, and is just wandering around town. Simkin says, one note, Christian Avasarala is colorful in her costume. Yeah, that's a political leader in The Expanse. So it's meant to kind of represent a little bit that she's a bit of a peacock. She represents high society, but she's also like an attention getter because she's a politician.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a great character as well. Also, that the actress that plays her is doing a voice in Arcane. So
Nice.
that's a neat little thing.
So, as we were talking about adaptations, did you read the book series of The Expanse?
I did not, but I've heard that at least initially, the show was pretty. It was pretty loyal to the book, but that helps that the showrunners are actually the co-authors of the book series.
Oh, yeah, that would help a ton.
So the book series is attributed to James S.A. Corey, if I recall correctly. That's actually a pen name.
Mm-hmm.
Of two people. They combined elements of both of their names. They co-created. From what I understand, okay, this is kind of an interesting story, so I'm going to go off in the weeds a little bit. From what I get, a writer started playing a tabletop role-playing game, I believe it was in GURPS, in a sci-fi setting run by the other co-writer. And at first they just met each other through like a local listing of like looking for players to play GURPS. And
Looking for group.
Yeah, he loved the world that the other guy had created, and eventually he played in it for a little while, and eventually like drummed up the conversation of like, let's do something with this. Let's write a book. And so the series is based on like a role-playing setting, and it basically a professional writer was like, hey, this is really good. Let's do something with it. And so they also co-run the show, as far as I know.
Very cool. Well, with something like that too, I feel like maybe this is just me wanting to have artistic control, because I'm also a control freak. I am going to trust the changes or the decisions that those creators are going to make. And if they don't adapt it completely faithfully, like if you're the person who created the world, I'm okay if you make changes because you want to show me the world that's in your head, and whether that was the world that I had in my imagination from reading it or not, like I'm okay if you adapt this to the media that it's going to be in and utilize that. Like if space looks a little bit different than I had imagined it in the book, that's okay because you're showing me what you see.
Yeah. Well, also we talked about this in the yet to be unreleased conversation we had about graphic novels. Don't worry, I'll edit it when I'm in Vienna. It'll go up someday.
I am positive that when you are with Nicole, she will make it happen.
Literally thumb screws.
Nicole, I support you.
We talked a little bit about Kirkman with The Walking Dead.
Kirkman.
And he made a deliberate decision when he brought The Walking Dead to the screen that they were going to tell a different story. They were going to tell the same through line, like Rick Grimes and his son and so on, all that kind of stuff, but they decided to change key elements. They still brought in a lot of the major villains and the major factions and everything, but they did different things. Yeah. Some characters survive much longer, some die earlier, some are completely a creation for the television show, some from the graphic novels never show up.
Yeah.
And it's all intentional. And Kirkman has even said in interviews, like, if I just adapted my comics directly, a lot of people would be fine with that, but people who had read the comics would be bored eventually. Yeah. If it was a panel for panel recreation, it would no longer be compelling. And I agree with that. And it's like, so if you're a fan of the books, you have a whole new thing to enjoy that feels familiar. It's kind of like watching the director's cut of a movie that you love. It's not bad to see a different take on the editing of that film. To see some, scenes that hit the cutting room floor. I've seen the theatrical versions of Lord of the Rings, and I enjoy the extended cuts, and I understand why some of the stuff that was trimmed for the theatrical release made sense. Similarly, Blade Runner, another famous sci-fi piece that has and it's like 3 different cuts, right? There's a director's cut, there's a final cut, there's the original theatrical cut. I don't even believe there's
just 3. I believe that there's so many. Like, I have accepted that I will never know which Blade Runner I'm supposed to watch.
And the thing about that is, depending on which cut you watch, the conclusion feels very different.
Yeah.
Because you're asking yourself the key question, is this character a replicant or not? And you're not sure, depending on which one you watched. So, Dell says Preacher the TV show was like that. Yep. Chose to go a different direction. I think as long as you're not character assassinating beloved characters that got you onto the screen in the first place, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
But you should tell new stories.
Yeah.
They're a little different with a film adaptation, but there's also limitations. So we were talking about The Expanse. Some of the stuff that they did with The Expanse, they did because they had a limited production budget.
Yeah.
For example, all the characters walk around all the time with these little data pads. I love to tell this story because I think it's so cool. They have all these little data pads that have all this computer information on them. So the way they did it practically is they just cut out plexiglass and they put a little handle nub on it for the actors and they hand it to them. They walk around and they do their scenes with them. There's nothing on it. And then post-production digitally adds all of the graphics onto the plexiglass to show computer readouts. And they did that because it was the cheapest. Like they could try to build like a rig for tablets or something to make them look different, but why? Why bother?
Yeah. And again, you talk about being inspired by what came before you. Star Trek was so successful doing stuff like that, using practical effects or just kind of, some of their stuff is like Christmas lights behind, cardboard or something. Like, it doesn't have to be the perfect thing to still read great to the audience.
Yep.
A dog in a costume. That's my favorite. It's dog's face sticking right out of this costume, and it's like a weird moppy thing with a horn. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't a dog. This is a completely different
alien.
animal.
It's an alien.
I saw a behind-the-scenes thing. So in The Expanse, they have grav boots, right? Everybody has to wear boots that have not grav boots, but magnetic mag boots. They have a switch that'll enable a magnetic but function, so that when they're in 0G, they can walk, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll stick to all the metal girding and everything. And when they're in a vessel that has G, artificial G, they're fine. They don't have to have it on. So they show the difference with a light, a red light that glows when they're activated, because it's a narrative part. Like it's important at times, because there's a lot of stuff where like, oh no, we lost gravity and things have to happen. So the way they did that is they just took boots off the shelf someplace. They stitched a little compartment for, I think they found like they're either wristbands or something like that have LEDs in them. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, we couldn't fabricate these any cheaper than we could just order these from like China or whatever. So we ordered these things, lopped off the bands, stuck them in the little pouches that we sewed onto these boots. And that's mag boots. And it's like, it's so cool to see like that creativity, but also like, yeah, it's like 50 cents a pair to do this, as opposed to what it would cost if they, specifically fabricated something special.
Yep.
Dell says the pieces that went into the original lightsabers are interesting. Yeah, Star Wars props are the best of this. I will never get tired of seeing how they created props for Star Wars originally, the OT. Because like everything from the starships are all like tank and airplane kits, like model kits just chopped into pieces, and let's make something,
Oh, what's the term?
Kit bash.
Kit bashing.
Yeah, I was gonna say kit bashing. I had it. I was like, wait, is that it?
I love kit bashing. I could go on and on. The greebling is all the extra bits, from like the turrets and wheels and all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating. They just worked with what they had, had access to.
The huge scene where you've got hundreds and hundreds of stormtroopers. It's a painting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matte painting. Like, it's so cool.
Bring them back. Bring back the matte paintings. They're so good.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah, I absolutely adore stuff like that. Well, and then you look at cosplay nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. So a lot of like the best cosplay that's being done wouldn't be practical for production because it's just so elaborate, time consuming, and
cost prohibitive.
Cost prohibitive, everything. Like the time invested, the materials, everything. But damn, the final product.
Damn, does it look cool.
Yeah, I mean, everything from like you get people who nail characters out of like fighting games and in other video games to like people who build full-size Space Marine suits from Warhammer 40K that are largely functional, like not actually battle functional, but like they're walking around on stilts in them because Space Marines are like 9 feet tall. They have like they're looking out the chest because the head turns and has a servo and everything. Like, I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing.
Yeah. It's the people who were making the LEDs that would turn on for like Iron Man armor and like actual helmets that would open and close. It's the people who make the functional wings who will open up and functional quote unquote, but will open and all of that. Like, no, there's no way you would do that for movies because it would never be cost effective. But gosh darn it, is it so stinking cool.
So Simkid says, what I recently found interesting was looking at how Battletech was interpreted by the Japanese. They've been posting the Japanese art for Battletech on the forums, and it's really interesting how they bubble the lines of the original art. I don't know exactly what that means, but I have noticed that like sometimes the Japanese interpret things kind of differently, and it leads to some interesting results. Dell says, I will say again, everyone with access to Disney Plus should watch Prop Culture. Well, so Adam Savage tested. He has his YouTube channel tested where, he's obviously known for Mythbusters, but he loves props. Like, it's what his profession was before they did Mythbusters, and it still is, I think, to a certain extent. And I believe Sean was telling me that he was on the set for the new Ghostbusters movie quite a bit, and I don't know if he was like there in like a working capacity, but he was definitely geeking out over stuff. But yeah, he loves props, and so he collects props and he does replicas and very knowledgeable, and he can do deep dives on a lot of this stuff. There's some really fascinating content over on the Tested channel. Okay. He also recently looked at Gunpla, and they got one of the really expensive Gunpla sets and put it together as a team, and he was just flabbergasted, blown away by the engineering. Because the engineering that goes into plastic Gunpla kits is fascinating. It's just a lot of it is almost all of it is friction. they're designed to not need glue. You can glue various bits on them, but they're not designed to need it necessarily. So it's crazy. Simkin says, think about how Japanese mechs have a particular look, like the Tau mechs. That's what you mean by bubble. Okay, I see what you mean. Dell says he built an amazing spacesuit for the G4 relaunch. Yeah, Adam Savage is awesome. And he has a big passion for the art and for the props and everything. And very frequently will do videos where they look at it. He asks questions about how it's maintained. They did one recently where they were looking at the Batwing from Burton Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so they're the original scale prop, which is massive, pretty big. They're restoring it right now for an exhibit, and like how much of it was basically in good condition already, what they had to kind of patch up and everything. They kind of went in and changed the electronics inside of it and essentially just left the original hydraulics in there and then did it with all modern wiring because like they wouldn't do it the same way anymore,
Right.
30 years later. That was kind of neat. And they're like, yeah, we left it in there for like archival purposes. We didn't really want to mess with that, but we definitely wouldn't like rig it that way anymore.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite. There's a lot out there for that kind of stuff, and that's a form of art all on itself. Like
Absolutely.
I think people sometimes don't look at engineering as art, but there's definitely art aspects to it.
Yay, Doodle Crew.
Doodle Crew.
Doodle Crew.
How about you though, Swan? What is something where like the color palette just really popped for you that really made you like stop and be like, damn.
I'm trying to think of like specific moments where I really had that moment where I was just like, oh wow. I think a lot of it comes from lighting, which is a weird thing. And so I'm going to call it Sarah because I'm pretty sure she'll remember it, which is impressive for me because I've got Swiss cheese brain and I don't remember anything. But it was one of our classes in college where we dissected. It was a scene from Star Wars. And so obviously I was paying extra attention because I like it. But they were doing a very bright red light on one side and a very bright blue light on the other side. And how intense that lighting was and how much it impacted the scene. And not just because lightsabers are bright on their own and they generate their own light, but this was working through corridors. This was in different elements where this lighting was almost telling its own whole individual story. And so I think, like many things, once you've been made aware that the lighting designers are doing that, you notice it more in certain scenes. I'll talk about one, and just because I watched it recently, is Zootopia. And I think Zootopia does this beautiful job where not only are all the different districts very different, but the lighting changes and affects the tone of different scenes very, very much. And that one has some, like, it's got some really intense scenes. It's got some really light scenes. And so just watching how much they play with really, really changing up color palettes and lighting design, like that's where I get really excited. And it's when it's done so well, I don't know that I'm noticing it until I do. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh yeah, that's so cool. So I like that. I like when it is subtle enough that it doesn't jump out at me right away, but at the same time, I can pick up on it and get really excited about it. I think something you mentioned, Blade Runner, I think like Cyberpunk does that really well. So Falcon and Winter Soldier, when they play around in Madripoor,
Yep.
that was cool because I was like, yes, like it's such a specific vibe, it's such a specific feel, but it works so well for that. And so cyberpunk feels that way. Not speaking to the game, just the genre.
Well, as regards to the game, I would say despite all the game's flaws, that is something that it nailed. Aesthetically, it looks like a cyberpunk game.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but yeah,
No.
The game looks like what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it was one of those, and again, I haven't played the game and I didn't know a ton about it, so I can't speak to that, but just from the trailers, like, it looked like cyberpunk. It read that to me. I'm trying to think of an example where, like, it wasn't done well, yes.
Maybe it was done well, or maybe that's what they were going for, but all the Twilight movies are so blue.
Yep.
I had to watch them for Bad Movie Night. Now, we watched 3 of the 5, and I will say that at least they're better than the 50 Shades of Grey movies, because those are hot garbage. But just the colors in it, like, everything is so ridiculously blue that when you stop watching the movie, your eyes, everything looks more yellow. Because their real life isn't that blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the Matrix is like that, right? There's a distinct filtering process being used to differentiate between when you're in the Matrix and when you're not, narratively. And so, like, they have the green filtering and then they have the blue filtering. But yeah, like, Twilight is just like, you guys took this too far. Like, this doesn't look real. It doesn't look like dreamy either. It just looks bad.
It doesn't elevate it. It's very stylistic, but it doesn't do anything for me. And honestly, well, I'm sure it will upset people. Some of the things when we were talking about the Nolan Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm going to extend that to a lot of DC cinematic universe, where you stripped away so much color and you desaturated it so much and it's so dark.
Yep.
Again, because we never really leave high school and college, like, there were times where we would get poor grades because our scenes weren't lit well enough to be able to see what the animation was doing. I remember sitting in the theater watching, it was a Pirates of the Caribbean. There's a whole fight at night in the ocean. It is so dark and so blue, you can't see what's happening. I'm like, You spent all of this money having this humongous CGI fight that I can't see anything of. Like, why? You didn't need it to be so monochromatic. You didn't need it to be so desaturated. It doesn't serve any purpose. So why? And, with DC, again, like, I understand that it's probably going to be, if you're telling a Batman story, it's probably going to happen a lot at night. So you're going to be dealing with less bright colors. But don't then make, like, everything gray. Like, there is color in the world, even at night.
I'm pretty sure Zack Snyder doesn't believe that color exists.
Yeah.
So I'm not bitter at all. But a good example of this would be Game of Thrones and the Battle for Winterfell.
Okay.
So, background for anyone who didn't watch Game of Thrones, the Battle for Winterfell has been built up for the entire run of the show. This is midway through the 8th season, the final season. This is like the culmination point of when the armies of man are facing off against the frozen dudes that you've seen in advertisements. I'm going to leave it at that. It's coming to a head. The zombie horde is coming with the ice wizards leading it. And
I just want a narration of Paul narrating Game of Thrones for me. I love it so much. Please continue.
And so the thing is, like, if you watch the behind the scenes that they released along with the season, they're like, yeah, this was the most expensive shoot of a television show of all time. Because we did 40 nights or something like that of night shoots to shoot the Battle of Winterfell. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's crazy. And then you watch the episode, and the entire episode is so desaturated that you can see nothing that's happening. Almost ever. And I understand, like, sometimes you're trying to evoke that feeling, that claustrophobia of the night and the uncertainty of a night battle. There's a time and a place for that. But it's not like a fantasy thing is not the best place for that,
Mhm.
because you have fantasy elements that can explain that away. So when you were describing Pirates of the Caribbean, like that's a fantasy series, like there's magic and stuff. So do something to make that interesting. But if it was Master and Commander, a show all about like naval warfare in the Age of Sail, I would understand seeing a night battle and having it be very confusing because that's the tension. But when we're talking about like zombies and skeleton people and wizards and krakens, and that's not real. And so like the same drama doesn't exist for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so desaturated. Like Nicole was here for that episode when I watched it. And I was just like, I can't see anything. I think I said that while she was sitting here behind me. I was like, I can't see anything that's happening. And this was the episode we were stoked for. And there were cool parts in it still, but it was like you just couldn't see hardly anything. Dell says the later Harry Potter movies delve into that awful blue as well. And yeah, the end of Game of Thrones leaned into the like, let's desaturate everything. Let's obfuscate all of our details. And it's like, if this is the most expensive single episode shoot of all time, where did the money go?
Yeah. Why?
Because
Why? You didn't have to. You could have gotten away with just crazy lighting and you wouldn't have had to spend this money.
I can tell that you very highly edited this in post to hide all of these details because something went wrong. So tell me what went wrong, because I want to know. I don't know. There were other issues with that episode too, like the tactics employed and everything just didn't make any sense, and people were like, "Ugh, this is dumb."
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you couldn't see any of the detail. There was a couple cool moments, like for example, at one point they the Dothraki, the horse warriors from the steppe, are out there on their horses, and they all hold their scimitars up, and somebody goes along and lights them all aflame. That's a very cool moment. Like you see dozens of mounted warriors with their flaming scimitars out in the darkness. That's cool. But the rest of the film is like, I didn't see anything happening. Yeah. Tell goes more coffee cups. Don't. I love that they edited it out. Like, so that hit headlines when people saw the coffee cup.
Right.
And within like 3 days, if you watched it on HBO, it was gone.
Jeez.
If it's that easy to delete the coffee cup, why didn't you do it in the first place? How did that ever hit release without being noticed?
I was going to say, I feel like some poor like person who was in charge of continuity, like, what were you doing, bud?
Yeah.
Because
it's not like, okay, if you haven't seen the images, it's not in like the corner of the shot.
No, it's in a big part.
It's like if I'm sitting here talking to you and this bottle of primer is just sitting over here, like at the edge of me in frame, very clearly not a fantasy object.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm gonna. I thought you were gonna go in a certain direction earlier when you started to ask me a question. You said something about you consider me an artist as well. In regards to miniature painting, one of the interesting things that's been happening in that hobby is much more attention to color theory in recent years. For anybody who doesn't understand, like, people have been painting little toy soldiers forever, for literally decades. But in the last 10 years, because of YouTube becoming this very viable platform for people to not just post their art and their videos, but also their tutorials, and to monetize it and make it their career, we suddenly have just like an incredible library of fantastic artists doing tutorials left and right. And it has really pushed up the quality of the game. Like, the best of the best nowadays are just mind-blowingly good. What they're doing on little tiny toy people is insane. But there's been a big push for better color theory, because a lot of people used to look in the book that that comes with the game or whatever, or look at the catalog, look at the studio versions of these figures and say, okay, I want those guys. I'm going to basically paint by numbers. Like, oh, they've got ultramarine blue on their armor, put the ultramarine blue. They got black trim, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case anymore. Like, people are shirking entirely the main paint lines offered by the company that makes the miniatures. And this isn't just a GW thing for anybody who knows what I'm talking about. It's like all of them. They're like, people are getting very like, you don't have to be committed. You're not in a committed relationship with one paint line. You don't have to only buy Citadel paints. You can buy Army Painter. You can buy Reaper. You can buy. There's a couple of boutique auteur style lines now as well, that are like super highly pigmented, super saturated, for very specific use, but they're also high skill ceiling, because if you don't know what you're doing with them when you thin them and everything, you can completely ruin it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been fascinating to watch that happen, because it's really changed the game. It's also made people like me who paint like a potato feel like I should never paint anything ever.
So when
But
you're
you're such
painting
a nice potato.
or you are painting like a potato, or you are a potato.
Yeah. Yes.
All those things.
All of those things. When I've sent stuff to Nicole, and I've just been like, this makes me want to throw everything away, because some of the people are just so damn talented. There's one artist in particular, Richard Gray. He's a Golden Demon winner, which is pretty much like the gold medal Olympics of miniature painting. He took in Warhammer, there's these things called centerpiece models. They're usually quite large. They're not tiny little guys. They're big centerpiece, like they sound.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a demon prince called Mortarion, and he's the demon prince of Nurgle, who is about rot and like infestation and corruption. And so he's giant, and he's got big chunky plate armor, but huge like corrupted butterfly wings.
Ooh.
And so there's a big circular spot on each wing, and he painted a hyper-realistic fantasy eyeball. Not like our eyeballs, but like a dragon's eye type thing.
Yeah.
On each one. And it's so gorgeous. And it's funny because in miniature painting, they call it freehanding when you do actual traditional art. Like when you actually just paint things, like images. He freehanded it all. So it's like absolutely mind-blowing, because it looks like it was done digitally.
Wow.
It's so good.
Well, I like that feeling is universal, no matter what medium you're in, because it's true of digital art, it's true of the watercolor artists I follow, it's true of the makeup artists I follow. Like, nope, like I will watch somebody do something where I'm just like, I understand that you took eyeshadow and you put it onto your eye, and that is a thing that I can also do. But mine will never look like what you just did, and I don't understand. So, yep. It's just sorcery.
I feel like that's like a good thing, though, to have that feeling like there's someone out there that's better. I want to be that good. I'm going to continue to aspire to be better, because I know that there are people out there who are up here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me just at first really just want to give up forever. But then like a day goes by and I'm like, no, I could do my art better. I could do this better. Let me just like look at their techniques. What do I like about them? What can I practice and grow from their example?
Yes.
Yeah,
Even if it's just I put like contrasting highlights on things now, or because I also paint minis, but I just started doing it. Like,
are you also a potato?
I'm probably more of a potato than Paul.
No, well, I'd see. I haven't painted recently, so that's the other problem. Is like anything, if you don't do it for a while, you reset almost back to zero. So I have some of the theory in my head, but I don't have any muscle memory anymore. I haven't painted in like almost a year now. I will get back to it at some point. It's one of those. It's something that I usually consider like a winter activity for whatever reason, which is also the worst time to do it.
From humidity standpoint?
Yeah, because you're dealing with humidity, you're usually dealing with like heat, so it's drying out your paints, and yeah, you can't prime outdoors, which is the ideal way to prime. It just it's the worst time to do it. But yeah, no, it's exactly what you said, Sarah, because I watch some podcasts and videos with some of these higher end painters in miniature painting, and they talk about how like things have accelerated to such a degree to where the line is now, but it's pushing all of them farther. And so like it's also forcing them to all try techniques that they wouldn't have tried before. One of the biggest like revelations lately, so the longest time in mini painting it was like acrylics. Like you got to use acrylics, it's water soluble, it's the easiest to work with, it's the best at the the size that we're dealing with, the scale. And then recently people are like, why not oil? And so we're seeing a lot more application of oil washes and even oil paints, which is really intimidating because you have to use thinners, and it's you're dealing with toxic elements, so you might want to wear a respirator and all that stuff. But the results are so good because you get those creamy blends, you're able to saturate in such a way that is just not achievable a lot of times with acrylic. The washes just like they glide exactly where they need to go to provide perfect contrast and look great. And yeah, it's completely changing the game. So there's been a new wave of arguments of like, stop looking at it the way we looked at it 10 years ago. Look at it. There's a huge scope of tools at our disposal, and you can experiment and you can try different things. And some of it is just absolutely mind-blowing. Chat is blowing up. Let me catch chat up a little bit here. Guardian Randy says, throw it all away. Chaos Alignment has entered the chat. He also says, I just talked about how the endorphins I get from playing retro video games no longer tickle the part of my brain that motivates me to do art. Why would I do art about retro video games when I could just play the retro video games instead? And then Simpkins says, so my lecture today for my freshmen, I asked them what the word design meant, like the verb to design. They had a really hard time with it. It was to get them to see all the principles we had been covering on putting the decision process of what was good and what was bad in art, and that was design. And then he said these artisan minis and such, they got great design skills. That's the other thing, is like for the longest time, miniatures were sculpted by hand, and then molds were made, and then they would, injection mold plastic, or in some cases, well, originally it was metal, like white metal and pewter. Then plastic became common, and then resin became kind of common. And then like resin, because it's brittle and hard to work with and technically toxic, people shifted back towards plastic. But now 3D printers, resin printers are cheap and affordable, and there's a huge cottage industry. Like there's like 1,000 Patreons now where you can get high quality digital sculpts to print on your 3D printer, and bam, you now have minis for a fraction of the cost of what like Games Workshop and everybody else wants to charge. And this line of minis isn't produced anymore. Who cares? We made, I sculpted a whole bunch of them. Now you can play that game from 10 years ago that doesn't exist anymore. D&D, there isn't a model out there made by a company that fits your specific D&D character. Don't worry, here's a tool that will allow you to make your own character, like Hero Forge and stuff like that. And so that's changed the game as well, because the level of detail you can get from the digital sculpts, and which then translates to like, you have people who are designing minis that are like not just good on the table, like they look good on the table, but they're designed to have the appropriate level of detail to look good painted, and to accentuate your paint without being too many greebly bits or too little, all of that kind of stuff. It's crazy. There's a whole... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Finish your thing.
No, that's it. It's basically like it's a whole new world of like, especially in the last 5 years, it's completely changed.
I enjoy very much when you are using the technical terms, but because I don't live in that world, I don't know what they mean, and it just sounds like you're using fun made-up words, and like, it just makes me very happy. Like, it's a very enjoyable listening experience where I'm just like, I don't know all of these things, but that sounded cool.
This is Nicole's daily life. And she's over it. So, Sarah, you said you've been painting minis. Are you painting for D&D?
I am, but I'm getting more minis than I can paint fast enough.
That's the hobby. Welcome to the hobby.
Also, so weird for you, Sarah. I'm shocked.
Usually I will paint for necessity. Like I'll get a mini and I'll be like, this is going to be in the game in 6 months. And then 6 months comes and I'm like, oh no, quick, hurry, paint this real fast.
Yeah.
Everything will be fixed with dry brushing. It's fine.
Dry brushing. Dry brushing is a whole topic in and of itself. Like 10 years ago when I first got in the hobby, everybody was like, you need to use a wash. We call that liquid talent. And then you do a little bit of dry brushing and you look like a professional, put it on the table, you're done. And then as the interest in the hobby got more and more technical, people started to like look down their nose at dry brushing and be like, oh, that's like a noob technique. Like you only do that when you're just starting. But now like these very talented painters have to start making videos where they're like, listen, sometimes dry brushing is the right tool for the job. Like it is the thing that gets the effect you want now, and it's easy. It's so much easier than layering and highlighting until you get that perfect look, because it just looks good. It like you do it, if you do it right, it looks right the first time. It's funny.
My buddy got a 3D printed dice tower that's like an orc village with an orc hut, and you throw the dice in and it spills out, and he just started painting it, and I was like, oh man, if you dry brush those stones, they're gonna look like real stones. And I was like excited for him to finish painting.
Yep. That's another side hobby as well, as like terrain building. What people make out of literal garbage, like foam and then like bottles and stuff that are sitting around the house. Like sometimes it looks like you're like, oh yeah, that's nicely painted garbage. Like you can see, okay, I can see the orange juice cap and this and that. But then other times they go to such a level of customization on top of it that you can't see the original components anymore. And you're just blown away by what it looks like. But 3D printing has definitely changed the game, and then just like YouTube. And everybody has a pile of shame, Sarah. It's okay. We all have one. I definitely have never like had a pile of shame and then bought a box with another 20 models in it before. That did not happen.
I thought if I just put them all the naked minis up on my desk, that it would make me feel bad enough that I would paint them. And I'm just like, no, here's a new friend. You need this little werewolf to go next to you.
Yeah.
And they're just, it's a little army of naked minis.
Got to slay the gray. Oh.
I know. I just need to like set up a weekend and like assembly line, like set them all out and be like, okay, I'm gonna paint all of this color on all of these, and by the time I'm done with this one on the far end and come back to the beginning, these are dry. Like just go through and paint all 50,000 minis in one day.
Yes, that's a topic. Yep, speed painting. There's videos about it. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. My big hang up at the moment is like, I really want an airbrush, because once you learn how to use it properly, airbrushing helps you prime faster, get your base coats down faster, and then also do shading. And then then you get into the brush work, and the time you're putting in with your brush at that point is putting solid detail on and really just upping the level a lot. Because to do all of that from the beginning with a brush just is so time consuming. But airbrushes are not cheap, and unfortunately it's one of those hobby things where like a lot of times people suggest get the budget, the bargain level thing first, make sure that you're happy, you've learned the ropes on the cheap piece of equipment, and then you upgrade. But with an airbrush, like if you get the very low end, it just isn't going to do what you need it to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you kind of have to start at the like $200 to $300 airbrush level, and then get a decent pump to go, or not pump, but compressor to go with it. And yeah, that's not, cheap.
Yeah. I also
And
need to stop inviting my friend over to paint minis because she is much, much better at painting than I am in general. So I'll be just like, it'll be, looks like I'm using a fistable crayon while she's using like a fine tip brush and like the goggles with 8 million magnifying glasses. Yeah.
hey, we all feel like the kid that colors with the fist in it, or his crayon in his fist from time to time.
Constantly.
Simkin
glad we
said,
got
I'm
that
sorry,
term
no, go ahead.
translated.
Sorry, I was going to catch up chat here. Simkin said, I don't have Gunpla. I bought a year plus ago that I have not opened yet. Nope. Guardian Randy says to Sarah, naked, at least give them some mini underwear, the indecency.
A lot of them are monsters. They don't wear underwear.
Yeah, no. Well, they don't wear underwear. They're clearly monsters. Dell says, I don't have Lego sets from 2+ Christmases ago either. Innocent whistles. See, my Lego sets never last. Like, I'm always like, oh, maybe I'll save this for later. Later is like a day, and then it's like together.
Cue the laugh track.
Sipkin also says, oh, trust me, I try to do that with my Battletech minis. You get tired so fast.
From painting underwear on them.
Yep. Well, they're big, giant robots. Like
big robot boxers.
And you know what they say about giant robots with giant boxers?
Takes a lot of paint.
Yeah. And Dell says, I just don't want to build them if they don't have display homes.
That's fair.
That's fair. I have a weird philosophy with Lego. Like, so I will occasionally buy sets on clearance that I don't care about because like the price per piece is just so cheap. I'm like, I like having Lego in my collection. But I like to build everything once. So a couple of years ago, there was the Lego DC Superhero Girls line, and I bought the like little cafe that had Harley and somebody else. And I immediately took the figures and threw them away because they're their gross friend-style mini dolls, and I hate them. Like, those went to the side. I built it, and then I tore it apart and threw the parts in my collection. Like, I figured if I bought the set, like, let me get the experience of enjoying the build once, even if I don't want that thing around anymore. And I think it's important to try to get, like, your money's worth out of having bought a set. And you learn things sometimes, like build techniques and design techniques that are kind of neat.
Yeah.
I don't want to be where that fire is.
Yeah. Just be careful, Sarah. You know what they say about fires.
What do they say about fires?
You build a man a fire, he'll be warm for a little while. You set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life.
Oh.
So don't get too close. There's no spark screen or anything on that. What the heck? Somebody call OSHA.
God damn it. Stop critiquing my art.
We're not critiquing, we're just memeing. Or I'm just
Keep it
memeing.
aside so we can roast them marshmallows.
Yeah. I live for the danger. I don't want it. I don't want it closed off. Let me at it.
I better stop critiquing or my chestnuts will get roasted on that open fire.
You'll go to visit Austria, but you won't come back.
Oops.
Emily, you have dance in half an hour?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, we probably should. I will need us to wrap up within the next 15-20 minutes. But I'm all ready. Like, I can literally roll out the door and go to it. But
yay.
yeah. Also, I've gotten to the point where I usually I judge it by where Nicole is at because she works the most diligently out of all of us. So when she's close to being done, I was like, nope, that's probably a good time to stop because
Yeah, I'm at finishing touches, so
it looks awesome.
20 minutes or so max.
You know what's funny is when Nicole's arting and we're just hanging out in a call, if I talk at her or make too much noise, it's very distracting to her. But then she'll beg me to play video games with my friends where we're shouting when we get shot by stuff and things, because that's apparently not distracting to her process.
That makes absolutely perfect sense to me.
Yeah, explain.
So am I an active participant
Right.
in it, or am I just a watcher?
Exactly.
Because again, if you are like this conversation, I'm with Doodle Crew, you know, I have to make sure I'm paying attention because I want to, because I enjoy the conversation, but also I want to talk and respond to questions that I'm asked, or, you know, respond to chat and stuff like that. Whereas if I was watching this stream and at home, I could just listen to what everybody was saying and I could do whatever I wanted to, and I would probably finish my pieces a little bit faster. It's why, in a really weird circular thing, it's why I don't like open office concepts as an artist, because there's no escape for you. Like I like cubicles almost make a little bit more sense because there's noise happening around me, but I am separated from it. Whereas if I'm just in a wide open office, there's no escape. And at any point, someone can talk to me. For the job that I worked, I wasn't able to wear headphones because I also had to answer the phone. So you're never able to just like get into the art groove because you're always kind of paying attention to your surroundings, and it's a very different way to create. So
Headphones were how I did the working in an open plan gaming studio, because I can't listen to people chew when they eat their food.
That's also one of Nicole's hang-ups.
Doesn't like
Well,
chewing.
the problem with you is like your microphone is always like here, and when you chew, it's loud because there's a microphone in front of your face. Like I don't mind it in real life as much, but yeah.
Yeah, this podcasting mic from Rode is like, if it's where it is right now, you can hear me okay. If I'm half an inch back, you might not hear me at all. And if I'm half an inch forward, oops, I didn't mean to boop it. If I'm half an inch forward, you're inside my mouth cavity. So yeah, it's an endless struggle where she's like, speak up or move closer to your mic. Stop breathing into the mic. Why are you so stupid?
Well, and I'm not sure if he's still hanging out in chat, but it is something I always appreciate when Bean comes and hangs out, because he's got very good ears and he'll always give me feedback on, you know, can you hear me? Is my mic malfunctioning? Like, what's going on?
He'll tell you exactly how you're tripping with your audio.
Oh, yes. Which I do frequently. But I did order a new cable today, and I'm hoping that that's going to kind of help fix issues that I've been having. So. Also, I just want you to know, like, I really did go into this thinking about a specific, like, background and setting for it. And if you look at the art that I'm creating, I spent a whole lot of time making that character look really cool. And there is not a lot happening in that background. And I'm just like, why do you do this? Why are you this way?
That's why there are separate artists for backgrounds.
Yes.
It's just how it goes.
Whole separate skill set. That's just not me. It's not me.
So this looks like a fawn shepherd or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then the fawn through the predator's vision.
I was thinking very much either like really bad setting sun, or like something is wrong. Like I want there to be something wrong in this scene. So my goal was I only changed her actual expression ever so slightly. So in this one, she's got a little bit more of a smile and her eyebrows are more relaxed. And in this one, there's less of a smile and she's got kind of concerned eyebrows. But the goal was to have the exact same pose and almost the exact same features, but have the lower one feel more menacing and more concerning. I guess I could actually just do my show and tell and zoom in so you guys could see. Yeah, so this one, you know, I wanted to have the light source being the sun and have it be very like open meadow. And like you said, so she's looking for animals or something like that. It's a very peaceful, very serene thing. Whereas with this one, it's clearly, you know, it's a concern. It's something is wrong and we're coming upon a scene where something bad is happening.
Listen, if you were to put 3 red dots on her head and then to take a complete left turn in the next panel, I would be so impressed, but also a little worried.
Yeah.
I saw it as forest fire. Like just
Oh, it could be forest fire. Yeah. Yeah.
still a natural scene, but
Yeah. I really wanted this, like, this red color because there's something about when you get a really bright red, it eliminates so much of the other colors that are happening. Again, it's playing with lighting in a very visual way, which I think is a lot of fun. And it's something I'm not great at and I don't do often. So it was good practice. Yeah.
I'm getting the feeling of like an explosion.
Hmm.
Like the Ultima weapon just went off. Praetorum. Nicole gets what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's kind of it's awesome.
Huh.
I don't mean it's kind of awesome. I just mean it's like
Hey, you know what, Paul? I'm surprised too.
No,
I'm like, hey, cool, that actually worked.
well, because it sparks so many possible like plot threads in my head just seeing it.
Yeah.
It's very evocative. I like it a lot.
No, it's fun. It was why, like, when I was thinking of the two, I wanted one just kind of as a reference for what like the scene would look like, but I really wanted to play with that, you know, kind of crazy lighting, limited color palette. And it's fun for me because like I would use this like, okay, so this is the character that I want to illustrate, but I don't have a story for her. So, you know, show you like this color mock-up and be like, okay, tell me her story. Tell me, you know, like, here's the few things I know about this character I designed, but I don't have a world. I don't have a plot. Like, what does it mean to you? And where would you go with this? And that's,
right.
Again, that's why I like the collaborative thing so much.
I've got the plot for you. Okay. So, a satyr, fawn, whatever shepherd is looking for a stray member of her flock, and she takes the wrong turn in the thicket and stumbles upon a strange ritual.
Ooh.
Spooky magic. Perhaps a summoning circle.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking like cultists or something, like something with magic, like red fire, but like magic fire.
Yeah.
One of
I
us.
love it.
One of us.
One of us. I love it. It's so fun. See, and now I'm excited to be like, oh, cool. Here's all the ways I could draw that. And I could, you know, here's how you get to play with the rest of this scene with the crazy lighting and shadow. And yeah, it's fun. Hey, guys, color is fun. Who knew?
Hugh knew.
Hugh knew. Hey, Sarah, you want to show and tell yours?
sure. I'm gonna make bullet shot sounds every time I hit a button. Pew! Is it working? Did it freeze? Yep. Oh no. Chrome is not responding.
Oh, no.
Maybe Nicole should share.
Okay. Hey, Nicole, you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, so this is my cozy little fireplace scene.
It's so
And
cozy.
unfortunately, my camera is not very good. The one that I'm using for overhead shots, it's a little bit grainy and like overexposed. But yeah, this is my first time painting fire, so I'm actually kind of surprised that it worked.
Yeah, it looks
But
great.
yeah.
It looks awesome.
Yeah. No, it's also, I am living for your cobblestone in front of that fireplace.
Yes.
Like, it's perfect. Oh, it's so
Well, you
fun.
got to be safe about it. So
It's true. That's true. Yeah, don't put carpet in front of your fireplace, kids.
Yeah.
Yes. Dell says that should be on a greeting card. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love it. It is so cool because the fact that it is a limited color palette isn't my first thought when I'm looking at it. Like, it looks like a complete scene to me, which, again, this is how you know you're using color well.
Yeah.
Not that anyone is
did-
shocked.
I did add in a little bit of purple in the flames. You can't really see it because of the quality of my camera, but just a little bit of purple, just to be like, oh, this is fire. This is like,
Yeah, fire. Fire. I'm sorry. I'm so happy. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
M needs TP for a bungle.
Yeah, and if y'all want to see a really nice picture of this, follow us across the internet at Doodle Crew Draw, because all of these pieces will end up posted on there so you can see close-ups and all of that fun stuff. And hey, Nicole, where can people find more of your amazing art if they want to see more of you?
you can find me pretty much all over the internet at Mayor Squish or Mayor Squish Art.
Yeah. Especially if you want art pieces to buy for the holidays. There's art available.
Yes. I'm still in the process of relisting stuff, so
Yeah, I was going to work on Etsy today. Did I? No. Okay. Sarah, how is your Chrome doing?
It's weird. I can see you guys around the pop-up window that says I should be able to share, so I'm just gonna close Chrome and come back, and hopefully I can show you things in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Wish me luck.
Yay, good luck. Well, hey, while Sarah's doing that, SoapboxKlotz, where can people find more of the stuff that you create?
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at SoapboxKlotz. Okay. Sorry. Need to use positive affirmation here. I am going to be visiting Nicole in Vienna starting the 5th of December until into next year.
Yeah.
So I will likely not be streaming. I mean, we've talked about maybe doing some streaming while I'm there. Maybe we'll like do some couch co-op together or something. We'll figure it out. But in the meantime, we are wrapping up season 6 of Crash Test Pilots that we do that show together. And unfortunately, we had 2 guests lined up for this season that didn't work out. Steven had to cancel on us kind of last minute. He had illness in his home. And then my travel plans, I didn't realize we conflicted with when we had scheduled Jenna. I'm actually flying out the day we were going to record with her. So that might still be able to happen. I need to talk to her. So that might happen. It might be a surprise. But I forgot that my flight is actually really late in the day that day. So, but yeah, we just covered Wheel of Time. We're going to be covering Cowboy Bebop this week. We might cover a couple more things. I would like to get a couple in the tank. That kind of depends on how Nicole's feeling about it. But that's going to wrap up the season. And then we are going to go on hiatus for a little while. While I'm traveling, we're not going to record anything new. Though I will look to release the interview that we did with Emily.
Yeah, it's me.
We had a little conversation about adapting graphic novels and comics for the big and small screen. And so we'll be putting at least the audio for that out. We were originally going to put it on YouTube, but we're not sure that we're really ready for the YouTube thing yet. So yeah, a little bit of a hiatus, but we will more than likely be back. And saying that, we have an idea to maybe plan some new things for next season. So stay tuned for all of that. And yeah, let us know what you think of. We try to cover a lot of stuff that was recent this season. So stuff that just came out, or we covered the first episode of the original Dexter run because the revival just came. So that one was a little jarring. That's not for everyone.
Yeah, say you also have an incredibly deep back catalog if people have not been keeping up with the podcast. And I love it because you guys cover such a wide range of shows. Like, there really is something for anybody who watches any sort of television. So yeah, there's something in there for everybody. So even while you're on hiatus, there's a lot of content to to check
Yeah,
out.
if I let Nicole pick everything, it'd be wall-to-wall teen drama, and if she let me pick everything, it'd be wall-to-wall sci-fi and fantasy. So we keep each other in balance.
And then you invite on crazy guests who also bring things. So it's
Yeah.
good.
But that's perfect for me because I love teen drama and sci-fi and fantasy.
Well, there you go.
The
we-
podcast for you. I have a good recommendation. All right. Are we ready for you? We ready to try?
Maybe.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm so scared now. Ooh.
This is how art feels, everyone. You're getting a visual representation of how it feels.
It did it. It did it.
Yay! Look at the baby.
So I did one that I wanted to do mostly blue, because blue could be sad. And then
Ooh,
Wow.
I
Nice
like that
sunset.
one.
and then I did like a coffee shop, which I think is my
Oh.
favorite because it kind of blends the poppier colors with the subdued blues.
Yeah. Oh, I am super feeling that second one, that purpley pink one. I am living for that color palette. I might
That
need you to
was,
send that to me.
That was my first when I was trying to think of what to do. I was like, I want to play with that color palette.
No, I like that.
So what I found awesome about that is that seems like the primer for 3 different comic series that would have completely different vibes. And I think that's really awesome.
Color.
Don't make me start another comic.
I was gonna say, don't say that to her because she'll do it, and she doesn't have time to do it. She's already doing like 4 comics. Hey, if people want to read your comics, Sarah, where can they read them?
Tumblr or Facebook.
Yay! Yes, follow all the Sarah content. It is fun.
Speaking of, I have to post my one for Monday.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Zombie or fantasy? It's one of those.
It's good. But yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. This was super fun. For everybody who's curious, yes, Doodle Crew will tackle Gardic Phone at a certain point. So don't worry, that will be a thing that we do. We've got another episode coming up, I think in about a week. So we've got a few more for December. Also, keep eyes out because we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. Yeah, and we're going to do an anniversary stream with all the OG artists from our very first Doodle Crew. So make sure you check out. That'll be the 17th of December, I think. I say with some confidence. I think that's what it is. Maybe. Yeah.
Yes, you got it.
Aha! Nailed it.
Good job.
So yeah, Doodle Crew. 1-year anniversary, which is just so dope. But yeah, follow us at Doodle Crew Draw across the internet, see art, see updates, hit us up on any of the social medias if you have questions, if you want to see more art, if you want to see different prompts. You can also support us over at Ko-Fi, however you say it. Everything is in our link tree. You can find us or literally ask any of us that you already follow. We can hit you up with all of that. But yeah, thank you everyone. We appreciate you. Goodbye.